Good afternoon. Okay, first of all, gentle reminder, mobile phones, switch off. Now, the presentation that I'm going to give today is very simple, and it's a presentation I wished somebody had given to me, when I was like 10, 12 years ago, when I was a student in my own graduation. Now, we've done this thing. I think ma'am has already done this thing, but I'd like to repeat this again. And more so because right now is the time we are living in, 2019 is the time wherein this skill that you see on the board, interpersonal skill, is one of the most important and one of the most, the core skill that one needs. Okay. Now, if you will look at it, below interpersonal skills, I've written this word called, this sentence, a life of virtue. Now, if it makes you wonder, what does interpersonal skills, the phrase in itself, have to do with life of virtue? Good, keep that wonder alive, because we're going to discuss why I've written that. Okay? Yes. Now, this is my favorite philosopher, Calvin and Hobbes. Are you aware of this cartoon? Okay. Now, Calvin and Hobbes have actually, in their own journey, they have given such bits of philosophical wisdom that hundreds and centuries worth of philosophy cannot compile into this thing. Now, this one instance, I'll tell you why I've taken this particular cartoon today. So Calvin is his usual self. He starts, I'm going to paste Susie's pate with slush ball. Slush ball is a ball of, snow. To which Hobbes says, some philosophers say the true happiness comes from a life of virtue. To which suddenly it has a real impact on Calvin, and Calvin changes. He goes back home, drops the snowball, goes back home, cleans his room up, does his homework, goes and gives some I love you mom greeting card to his mother. And goes to the driveway, cleans everything up, eats his food on time, disposes of the garbage, and everything is done. After everything is done, finally he still takes a slush ball and he slaps Susie with it. And he says, someday I'll write my own philosophy book. And it says, virtue needs some cheaper thrills. Have you heard of this before? Cheap thrills. Another song, it's a very famous song also, but cheap thrills in itself, is a thing. It's like, taking pleasures and out of some really insignificant and small things. Yeah? Okay, next slide. Now, this is the word today we are going to focus on, and I'm going to start off with this word. This word is eudaimonia. Okay? It's a word that comes from Greek philosophy. And it's a word that has been very debated, and it has been debated like for nearly 2,500 years. Starting from the ancient Greek time till the present time, philosophers all agree that this word, eudaimonia, okay, is at the heart of our existence, and this is why we live. What this word is, I'll tell you. Next. Okay. Now, this is the overview of the word. And what does the word say? This is the position that with virtue comes true happiness, is one with roots in Aristotle's teachings. Aristotle was one of the first philosophers to give a name to this thing. Aristotle believed in something called the eudaimonia. Okay? The definition is, the virtuous person he holds is one who possesses the virtues and has the practical wisdom to know when and how she ought to exercise them. She has the feelings at the right times, about the right things, toward the right people, for the right end, in the right way. Now, very simply put, eudaimonia as a feeling means to do the right thing at the right time with the right person. And Aristotle and a lot of Greek philosophers believed that if we were to do this in life, our lives would be very happy, our interpersonal relations with people would be complete, and we would live lives without any worry and without any feeling of anxiety or sadness in itself. When the virtuous person does all this and exercises virtue, she experiences a distinct form of pleasure. Pleasure that on Aristotle's account completes the activity. And the activity could be anything. The activity could be the most simple thing you do. The activity could be, I don't know, helping a blind person cross the road. In one of the classes we were having this discussion as to what satisfaction does a person get by helping a blind person cross the road. What do you get out of it?
Has he done a good thing?
He has done a good thing. Okay, but what does that good thing do to you?
So, satisfaction.
Alright, satisfaction, happiness, alright. Why do you get that sense of satisfaction? What have you done? You have achieved nothing.
Something useful to others or self.
Something useful to others. What useful thing have you done to yourself by helping an old man cross the road?
Obtaining good qualities.
Okay. What else?
Be responsible towards others.
Be responsible towards others. Alright. That's one way of saying it. What else?
Do what we like.
Do what we like. Yes, what are you saying?
Do what we love.
Selflessly without expecting something in return.
Doing something selflessly without expecting anything in return. Now, that is ideally a very romantic notion of life in itself. To do things without expecting anything in return. Now, eudaimonia does not say that. Eudaimonia says that you do, and you do good things. You do not for expecting or receiving awards or helping people. You do it for your own sense of happiness. So I helped the blind man cross the road. Probably I was so selfish that I did not even care enough to think what was going through the blind person's mind. I did it for my satisfaction. So in itself, this concept, and I'm going to tell you in more detail about this concept, in one sense, eudaimonia is so to speak, a selfish concept. Because it is all about you and about the right or the wrong actions that you do and nobody else. Next. What does it mean? Now this is a much more simpler meaning. It refers to a state of having good indwelling spirit, or being in a contented state of being healthy, happy and prosperous, a state in which well-being becomes an essential value. Okay, this is almost like it could be a page from any lifestyle magazine. Do the right thing, lead the right life, lead a healthy life, lead a happy life. Okay, next. Now, this is a philosopher, Hannah Arendt. Hannah Arendt is a philosopher who has extensively written about the Holocaust, about the Jewish Holocaust, and she was one of the first people in 20th century to theorize what happened in the World War II. Now, Hannah Arendt has written quite a lot of things, but we are going to focus very particularly about what she has to say about eudaimonia and this feeling of being in that state. The ultimate end of human acts is eudaimonia, happiness in the sense of living well, which all men desire. All acts are but different means chosen to arrive at it. Okay, I'll give you 30 seconds. Just read the definition to yourself. Read it to your mind. Okay? Alright, next. Now, I'm giving a very, very brief history of I'll tell you what this word has to do with the concept of interpersonal relations. We're going to come interpersonal relations and interpersonal skills. But a very brief, just a historical background to what this word has come to mean according to different philosophies of different times. Socrates believed that virtues such as justice, courage, self-control and wisdom were essential and when practiced are sufficient to achieve eudaimonia. Okay, this is one of the earliest definitions that a philosopher, that is Socrates, gave. Virtue he held as a form of knowledge of good and evil that is required to achieve the ultimate good. Okay, so this is why I started with saying a life of virtue. Interpersonal skills at the end of it was living a life in itself of a life of virtue. Next. Now, The word virtue in itself, the Oxford English Dictionary of the word virtue is a good moral quality in a person or the general quality of being morally good. Now, in the face of it, the word virtue in itself, we can dispute about it. You and I, we can have a discussion, we can have an argument. You can say that I am doing this particular act, to me it is right, to you it is wrong. And we can have a debate like what is virtuous and what is not virtuous. But at the core of it, virtuosity or the word virtue in itself focuses on something completely different. It's about what you believe is morally right, what you believe is morally wrong. Now, it does not go to say that, for example, this is an example that people often give, that, for example, that Hitler believed it was morally right. No, that's actually a bad example, because regardless of the hatred that Hitler spread, Hitler knew what he was doing was wrong. Hitler knew that killing people and killing nameless thousands and lakhs and crores of people is a crime in itself. He used it to justify something else, that's a different thing. But in itself, this view holds that you and your conscience knows what is right, knows what is wrong. Yes? Next. Now, next came Plato. Okay, Plato suggested that when an evil person does something that is wrong, the person is likely to feel guilty even when there is no fear for punishment of their actions. So this was Plato's definition of the same concept of eudaimonia. He said that when a really bad person does a really bad thing, knowing fully well that nobody is going to prosecute him, no judge is going to put him behind bars and things like that, that bad person will still know that what he has done is wrong. And that fraction of a light, and that thing, that little thing, is what according to Plato is eudaimonia. Now, in general English, we all are doing or have done the poem Vultures. Yes? Everybody, we've done the poem Vultures. Now, what was the poem Vultures about? It was about
Two animals waiting for the food.
two animals who have eaten their stomach full. And who are those animals? They are vultures. Okay, it's one of the most, probably, it's one of the most chilling poems you'll read in that text. Okay, so two animals, those vultures have just eaten like a huge meal of dead humans. But they're sitting there with a lot of love between them. That husband and wife or boyfriend and girlfriend vulture, whatever they were, they are very much in love. And the poet says this thing, and the poem ends with this line, that even in the darkest corners of the heart, there will be a faint glimmer of love. Or he says, or you can see that the other way around also, that where there is a faint glimmer of love, the darkest corner of heart can also exist. So it's like a two-way street. It need not only be like that person's heart is only filled with love and no hatred, or that the person's heart is only filled with hatred and there is no love. That poem is actually a very fine demonstration of how our hearts are made up of both love and hatred. Now, this is a question that I framed for you. Okay, now read this question. Is it possible to develop a system of thought in ourselves in which we acknowledge what has hurt us personally, and can we try not to perpetuate the same thing? Say I was bullied as a child, I got ragged. As a student, somebody called me names. Okay, and somebody basically called me names or abused me in school, hypothetically. Now, this is a question that a lot of philosophers ask: can the world be a good place if we do this thing? Now, if I were to grow up, which is generally the case, that people grow up with their own set of traumas, with their own set of anxieties that have come from their childhood, from their upbringing, from where they grew up and things like that, and I will by default practice the same thing. Maybe not with you, but maybe with somebody else. I won't call you names, but I will call somebody else names. I got called for whatever in my schooling life, in my upbringing, my probably parents taunted me for something. I will make sure that when I grow up and when I am in a power of, position of authority, I'll do the same with somebody else. So this is a question that philosophers ask. If whatever wrong has been done to us, If we grow up and stop doing those things to others, can this world be a better place? Yes? Okay. Yes, of course. In a very utopian sense, yes. For example, again, coming back to the world wars. Okay? Or take any instance of hate. Any instance of hate. For example, what just happened in New Zealand. Are you aware? What happened in Christchurch? Okay. Now, say some survivor of that thing were to grow up and to say that, so many years ago, my father was like gunned down like a dog in a mosque. So today I am going to pick up weapons. Which is, what is called as the cycle of violence. Yes? So if that boy were to adopt this system of thought wherein he is saying that no, what wrong has been done to me, I will not perpetuate the same wrong on others. Now, philosophers argue, and especially social justice philosophers argue, that the world would be a much, much better place if we were to do a thing as simple as that. Like, forget everything else. If we were to only do a thing, say I got somebody picked my pocket. So if I don't grow up and become a pickpocket myself, I would have done not just myself but the whole society a big favor. Okay, next. Now, in itself, this is interpersonal skills. I'll tell you why we were talking about eudaimonia till now. Okay, now this is we are coming up to the core of it. This is interpersonal skills. Next. Now, interpersonal relations and interpersonal skills are two different things. Okay, interpersonal relations is the study of why beliefs, attitudes and behaviors can cause problems in personal and professional relationships. These are the skills we use every day. These are skills you and I are using right now. I am using an interpersonal skill right now. You're not just sitting and listening. You are using a very important interpersonal skill, and that is listening. That is perceiving. Okay, we use every day when we communicate and interact with people, both individually and in groups. These are skills that include a wide variety of skills, though many are centered around communication, such as listening, questioning, and understanding body language. Okay, we won't have enough time for me to go into the very specificities of it, but I'll break down a few major things into it. Next. Now, this is the major relationship management challenge. Okay, this is how our societies, you, me, all of us are built into. On the top is the self, that is myself, yourself, whoever it is. On the bottom is one-to-one. And over there is group members, and group members could mean anything, a group of friends, your family members, your colleagues, your peers, your work friends or whatever. Now, in itself, this triangle is like a sum of all the relationships you and I will have in our lives. This is it. You will not have anything beyond this triangle. It is you with another person, it is you with a group of people. That group of people could be the world for all it matters. Okay, and this is it. This is the only two people, if you exclude yourself out of the equation, those are the only two people with whom you will have to have some sense of interpersonal relations, and for that relation to be a successful relation, you will need to have a set of very defined skills, what are called very famously as interpersonal skills. Next. Now, I thought it was very important for me to, while elaborating on it, that to give you a brief idea. See, with all the things that I've been doing, I've been giving you theories. And I purposefully give you those theories to give you a broader sense of, the different debates that are happening and how people are seeing those things. For example, interpersonal communication is majorly, philosophers have come up with 4 different perspectives or theories to look at it. Okay, the first one is the systems perspective. The second is the politeness theory. The third is the social exchange theory. And finally, the fourth one is the dialectical perspective. Okay. Now, what these are, I'll tell you in more detail in the next slide. Next. Now, the systems approach focuses on the communication that takes place among groups of interacting individuals. It focuses on patterns of communication that exist to sustain homeostasis and achieve systemic goals. The approach also recognizes the influence of larger suprasystems as well as subsystems. Okay, so basically, very simply put, this approach to the communication between human beings recognizes and places a very important position to bigger systems. How is my relation with this person who is from Thailand? Why do I see this person the way I see this person? This person is from China. I see this person as a very different individual as compared to me. Why do I see that person like that? So the systems approach would involve, cultural upbringings and notional understandings and semantic understandings of language and things like that. Next is the politeness theory. The politeness theory appeared in a framework of pragmatic approach to linguistics, according to which the interlocutors are the two people who are talking. The interlocutors use particular strategies in order to achieve successful communication. This theory reflects two opposite needs of humans: a desire to be approved, and secondly, to have the opposite person's independent point of view and relative freedom of opinion. Now, the politeness theory says that you and I, whenever we meet, we will have a face in front of us, and that will be my formal face. When I meet my friend, I'll have an informal face. Okay? So this theory says that any interaction between two individuals is not a meaningless interaction. It's an interaction in which one individual is seeking the other individual's opinion. So when I talk to you, this theory says that every time two individuals interact, one individual and the other individual both are seeking each other's approval. Okay? Next. This is the social exchange theory, the third one. This theory proposes that social behavior is the result of an exchange process, and the purpose of this exchange is to maximize benefits and minimize costs. What does it mean? According to this theory developed by George Homans, people weigh the potential benefits and risks of social relationships. When the risks outweigh the rewards, people will terminate or abandon that relationship. You understand what it means? It means that every time you go out to make a friend, but in the process you discover that this person with whom I want to do friendship or whatever is culturally too alien to me, or comes from a land which I do not like, or something like that. Or when you believe that if I were to become his friend, the other people in the class will stop talking to me, you will take the decision of not being that person's friend. Or if you believe that if I become this person's friend, everybody else will also start liking me. Either way around. So this theory, the social exchange theory, says that every time you interact with a person, human being, it's like a barter system that you're doing. You're exchanging things with that person. Okay? Next. Okay, this is the last theory. Dialectical perspective. Have you heard of this word before? Dialectics. Okay, I'll tell you what it is. The fundamental assumption of dialectical theory is that all relationships, friendships, romantic relationships, family relationships, are interwoven with multiple contradictions. The central concept here is contradiction. A contradiction is a dynamic interplay between unified opposites. Opposites are unified if they are in some way interdependent. This can take two different forms, which are referred to as a unity of identity and interactive unity. It basically goes to say that this is probably, this theory sums up the relationship we have with our parents, or probably with somebody else, or maybe with a really good friend. You can't live without them, but you can't live with them. It's like that. You share a bond, you share a blood bond or whatever bond, but every morning it's a headache. Okay, it's a contradiction. You love your mother, but she is extremely irritating. It's a contradiction we all have. Okay, he or she is your best friend, but she's an extremely arrogant person and you hate that about her. So these are contradictions that we actually in our everyday life, we imbibe these contradictions. And this is the dialectical perspective. Basically that every relationship has contradiction built into it. Okay, next. Now, the interpersonal skills. What are these interpersonal skills? Like I said, I'm going to break down a few brief chunks of it, just to shed some light on it. First is verbal, non-verbal, and finally listening. Now, if you will see, listening has been given as a separate category. Okay, listening is okay. What is the difference between listening and hearing? Are they both the same words?
Listening is understanding.
And hearing is? Just hearing.
Not taking it out.
Not taking it to heart, not registering it. That's the difference between listening and hearing. Okay, verbal communication is what? What we say and how we say it. Non-verbal is the manner in which we communicate through our bodies. And finally, listening is how we interpret what we hear and how we perceive others' body language. Okay, I'll tell you more in more detail about this thing next.